Well, first of all, could you imagine if I were president right now and we had this massive attack from the coronavirus? You know, now they like to call it they have new names and they'll have other new names, but it's exactly what we had. We had the same thing. If that were me, they'd be saying, what a horrible thing, what a horrible job. I don't ever hear that, you know, and these are numbers in some cases that are equivalent to what it was, but we don't hear that.
Because Joe Biden doesn't lie about that the way you did. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Happy Monday to you. I'm sober and I don't smoke pot. I just want to say that. I don't know what's going on. I really don't. I could just tell you that just, a few seconds ago, there was a breaking news story out of Jacksonville, Florida, where 6 unvaccinated members of a single church have died of COVID within 2 weeks of each other. And another person who is not my friend, but somebody that I knew in my broadcast life, we used to call him Dickie Farkle. His name's Dick Farrell. They thought of him as the other Rush Limbaugh. Ha! Yeah. He was screaming on Newsmax. He literally worked in Florida radio for a really long time, and then finally the owners of the radio stations that he worked on sold their stations. He ended up on Newsmax and doing voiceover work. He died of COVID after being on the air telling everybody what a joke this was, what a plot this was. It was it was a pandemic, and he wasn't going to get a vaccine, and it was, the sheeple and all that. Died of COVID on Friday. 65. He was 65 years old, and now he's dead. So I don't know. I think the unvaxxed are causing it. But, if you listen to Donald Trump, it's Biden, it's the border. If you listen to Ron DeSantis or Ted Cruz or any of the lunatic fringy right, they're going to tell you that the reason why this is all happening is Biden is doing something different at the border than Donald Trump did, which is false. It's just not true. Everybody is being treated, to a deportation. They're tested. If they're positive, they're quarantined, and then they're deported. If they come here and they test and they're not positive, then they're deported immediately. Children are a different story because Biden is not being cruel for the sake of cruelty. But anyway, that's the COVID scenario. And yes, we're adding 108,000 new cases a day, every day. Nobody wants to talk about Sturgis, which was a super spreader event last year and now is happening again. And by the interviews I read of the people in Sturgis at the big motorcycle rally, none of them are vaccinated. They didn't get around to it, or they don't believe in it, or what happens. If I get it, I get it, without a single shred of care or concern for children in the area, a single care or concern about people that, don't have anything to do with them, who may be running a grocery store or who may be running a restaurant right. So this is the state of the United States, okay? We have, a big debate about whether or not COVID is being spread by dirty, diseased immigrants, which a lot of right-wing lunatic, white supremacist, or authoritarian fascists want to say, or is it bad information coming from conservative talk media and drunk and stoned talk show hosts? I'll leave it to you to figure out where to get your health information. I'll leave it to you to figure out who could be right about vaccinations, who could be right about the spread of this thing, who could be right about mutations, who could be right about why it's perpetuating, whether it's the unvaccinated, lily-livered cowards, or it's dirty, diseased immigrants at the southern border who are being tested and deported immediately in the same fashion as the previous president. I don't know. But what I came here to talk about today is that when we were going over how freaking close we came to losing our democracy as a result of the My Pillow guy and the Sidney Powells and the Rudy Giulianis and the Paul Gosars and the freedom crackers in this country, how close they came to literally undoing this experiment in democracy that's gone on for about 200 years with violence at the Capitol. Turns out that the only thing that saved us from complete and utter ruin and a trip off the cliff into autocracy, fascism, whatever you want to call it, was the Department of Justice. That it really, really, that we came within a dyed orange hair of losing our country, that they came that close to seizing control of our democracy through violence. And now, on Friday I was going through the timeline, so I wanted you to understand how, they talk about the banality of evil, right? It's usually, something very milquetoasty that causes all kinds of destruction and evil and an apocalypse, right? And so I'm looking at this guy, Jeffrey Clark, and I'm telling you that you've got this dull, useless guy who was part of the Koch brothers, operation, and he's working at one of the Koch brothers, law firms now. But you look at this milquetoasty, banal, sort of a boring functionary, a bureaucrat who was over in, believe it or not, the reason why we have the problem with, not keeping up with the goals to mitigate climate change is because of 4 years of Donald Trump turning back the hands of progress, pulling us out of the Paris Accord, et cetera, right? And this same guy, Jeffrey Clark, was in the environmental unit over at the Department of Defense as a functionary, as a tool of the Koch brothers' fossil fuel hopes, dreams, and wishes. And then in September of 2020, just ahead of the election, Donald Trump moved him into the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. And he was then consulted. Don't ask me why he was consulted as some low-level bureaucrat as to what to do about overturning the election. And he said, what we could do is we could create the idea of, we could feed the beast. We could feed the right-wing lunatic fringe by writing letters to Georgia and Arizona and all these 6 states, these 6 swing states, saying, not that anything happened, but we can insinuate ourselves and into especially Republican-led governments, state governments, and we could suggest or infer or imply that the Department of Justice has concerns about the legitimacy of the election. And of course, the acting, Bill Barr resigned because Bill Barr said there was no evidence of fraud in this country that would change the result of this election in any state, let alone in all these states that he's alleging this crap happened, and it didn't. So Bill Barr resigns. And so now we have the acting, Jeffrey Rosen. And Jeffrey Rosen is like, there is no way I'm going to agree to send letters suggesting or inferring or implying or even creating a question in anybody's mind, Republican, Democrat, Secretary of State, or governor in this country. It didn't happen. It did not happen. And this guy, Jeffrey Clark, was like, well, then I want to meet with the president. I'm going to break the chain of command. And Donald Trump literally held court. Like I said, like a Celebrity Apprentice episode where Jeffrey Clark and Jeffrey Rosen sat at a table and Donald Trump is saying, which one of you should I pick? And the only reason why Jeffrey Clark, who was willing to do these bad things, because he was this dull, useless person, the only reason why Donald Trump didn't pick Jeffrey Rosen is because the rest of the Justice Department said they would all resign en masse if he picked Clark, and Clark actually submitted this letter on the Attorney General's stationery. And Donald Trump had to think about that. And then finally said, oh, all right, I'll leave acting, I'll leave the acting AG Rosen in place. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to RandiRhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.